My name is Mike Schoenberg. I'm Assistant Chief here at the Town Fire Department. And welcome all these folks that came to learn about drones in the fire service. Our speaker tonight is actually Lieutenant Josh Larson. He's here because Chief Harris was at a business meeting tonight and couldn't make it. So Chief informed me that he's the man to talk to. He's got a lot of information for us tonight. Things that we need to know even before we fly our first drone.
Thank you. So how many other departments do we have here? We got Turtle, obviously, and then Janesville, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Three departments? Okay. So, Chief Harris says hi and
We
apologize.
also have a group from the Rock County Model Society that donated our drones to us, and they're here to learn too about it.
Awesome. So, Chief Harris does send his apologies last minute meeting for the possible Station 3 that we're going to have. So, he had to be present for that presentation. So, he asked me to come here because I'm actually the person that heads up our program at Middleton. So, we started this 3 years ago, about, and he presented the idea to me firsthand because I've been a pilot since I was 17, and he wanted me to kind of figure out what road to take and how to do this, and really where we can bring this technology into our operations. So started there, and when we started, yikes, the regulations were ridiculous. I was quite a pilot licensed pilot at that time, and we all had to fly a drone. So our program was pretty much shut down at the beginning. I told our chief it was impossible. We had to put 10 grand per person out just to fly what looks like a toy. So that was kicking the butt until about 2 years ago when the FAA said that they didn't have oversight over public aircraft. So that's kind of the process that we're going through now is what we can do and how to get ourselves licensed legally as well as trained to be able to fly on the fire ground and other sort of operations. So just a little bit about myself beforehand. Outside of the department, I own a company called Breakover Services, and I do the exact same stuff there. So I work with both businesses and public safety agencies to get them going, get their drone programs implemented, and really get them going so it's sustainable and they're safe in their operations. As a man pilot, it scares the crap out of me knowing that there's possibly uneducated people out there flying where I'm flying. If one of those strikes me, I'm done. There's no going back. So that's my main purpose of calling out is to teach people how to do this safely so everyone can be in the same airspace and do what they need to do. Along with that, I've been with Middleton for 6 years. Started as a junior in high school and worked my way up. Got recently promoted to my position now. I am currently an independent writer for fire engineering, doing exactly this as well, writing so other departments throughout the nation know what to do and how to do it. So we started with the idea of using it for wildland fire. That was it. So we could use it to see how our fire is progressing during the prescribed burns. And that's the only idea we had for it. We thought that was the only way it was going to work. Well, I'm not sure if you've seen the story, but within a week of getting that first burn, we caught someone that robbed a store in the cattails of one of our local ponds, and that news hit nationwide. So since then, myself and my chief have been going around and talking about what we do. So besides wildland fires, we've used it for structure fire surveillance, fire investigations, as well as search and rescue and law enforcement operations. More so on the law enforcement side for accident reconstruction, as well as evidence collection. We work with the ATF and Department of Criminal Investigations and the same things. Natural disasters, large-scale natural disasters, hazardous materials responses. Beats putting someone in there and get a good bird's eye view of what's going on before you send them to your men in there. But then, really, what I don't think a lot of departments can see what this technology is used for is volunteer, more so outside of Dane County, the bigger areas in Wisconsin have difficulty getting personnel. Use these devices to promote your department, show what you can do, show how you are advanced, what you can do, and really it drives in those individuals. As Chief says, our department, the station at least, is the number one recruiting factor for us. This could be your number one recruiting factor. People want to come and have fun, and that could be it. So that's one thing Chief and I go around and stress is don't go around telling people that the volunteer services had issues with employment, because we're not. We just need to get that idea out there. We need to show them that we're changing, that the technology is out there, and that we are adapting to what's going on. So it's been very, people have been very adaptive to it. We've gone to his little hometown, Aurora, Wisconsin, and done the same talk, and they've since then gotten 10 people to volunteer for the department. So people see it, people like it, people want to get involved with it. So, and I see that you guys just got it on. So that's awesome. So I would have showed you a video, but we don't really have no issues. I'll send all this stuff over to Assistant Chief, so you guys can look at the PowerPoint that I had and look over all the steps that are involved with this process. So when I go out and talk, I talk about my 10 steps of successful and sustainable implementation. So the first, which is the very important one, is getting the concept of operations developed. Most of us pretty much know what that means and know what we want to do with our device, but it goes beyond just flying it for firearm operations. We're starting to think about, okay, what equipment do we need? What personnel do we need? What do we need legally? So you guys take a great first step in contacting us and figuring out what steps should be done in order to do what you want to do. So I'm sure your concept has already been developed, and you already know how you want to use this technology to benefit your department and your citizens. But that is the most important part, is to define that part, because that is the base of your structure, essentially. So the next step then, which you all have done, is get equipment. So once you get that concept developed, that equipment selection should be based on what you want to do with it. But there's a wide variety of options. As you can see sitting here, we have Unique and DJI, and there's tons of other companies out there that manufacture drones. And it's all tailored to what you want to do with it. We've gone with DJI because of the versatility of it. We like that we can change out cameras on it. So we have two Inspirers, they're called. One that can have a camera that zooms, and the other one that has a thermal camera. So we use those two the most, and we have a Phantom. That is free, and we use that one to train on. So that's the biggest, those are the two biggest things. And those take a long time to really process and figure out, not just through the department, but you gotta talk to your commission and really get the citizens on board as well. Our first drone wasn't purchased by us. It was the same thing. It was donated from an individual and an organization. And the reason why it was donated is because we were able to go out and promote that what we wanted to do was in benefit for the community. And people loved it, and we still get donations today for our equipment. So it's another thing. Get out there, let people know what you're doing. They love to hear that you are adapting to new technology and using it for their benefit. So the next thing, which is really what I'm here for, is to talk about the regulations and operational requirements for you all to get started. So there's two paths for public safety agencies, and it really depends on budget, time, and personnel. So what I'm going to outline is really it's tailored to what you want to do with your department. It doesn't have to be a big scale program like Middleton. We have 3 drones, 30 certified operators. You can have a drone and 2 or 3 operators. It's all up to you and how you want to implement that program. So the first step is to decide whether you want to go through what's called a COA, Certificate of Authorization, or Part 107 certification. So the COA is specific to public safety and public entities. So universities can apply for them, and other research facilities can apply for that. And it grants you nationwide access to what's called Class G airspace, which is, in essence, where smaller airports are. So you can fly outside of, so for us in Middleton County, we can't fly within 5 nautical miles of Madison. And then that's pretty much standard for the rest of the nation. You can't fly within 5 miles of a big airport. And you're also limited to 4 feet. And that's standard for both operations. So when I go out and talk, it's really dependent on what kind of time you have and your budget. And the reason I say budget because the Part 107, which is tailored towards commercial operators, so I have that license because I go out and I fly for businesses. That one you have to pay an exam. So it's $150 for the exam every single time you take it and for every person. So it can get pretty pricey depending on how many people you want to certify for your department. But time-wise, the COA, you have monthly reporting. You have to document a lot of stuff and send it into the FAA, which makes it almost restrictive in a sense to what you really want to use the technology for.
Are you one or another? You can't be both.
We are both. And the reason we did that is because there's some instances where we're not going to operate from a COA. There's other instances where we're not going to operate at Part 107. Those instances, so COA is just for public safety operations. So anything that has to do with government operations, that has law enforcement, search and rescue, some sort of research is involved in it as well. But primarily what we do is considered public aircraft operations. But if we go out and do a demonstration, that isn't covered anymore. Or if we go out and we want to, again, I was talking about filming for your department as a promotional piece, that doesn't fall under the COA. That falls under Part 107. Or you can claim that you do it as a hobbyist. That area is still great, so we went ahead and protected ourselves because we weren't sure exactly where that was going. As of now, a couple days ago, the FAA has announced that we can, as public safety agencies, operate under Part 107 and then apply for what's called an emergency COA. That emergency COA was only allowable to people who had a current COA. What that emergency COA did was allow agencies to go in that 5 nautical mile radius of those bigger airports. So if you had an area like in Madison, we had to go search for an individual that was literally across the street from the airport. We were able to apply for that, get it within 30 to 45 minutes, which was, it's not the shortest amount of time, but we were able to work with what we had and get access into that airspace. So that's all changing. Part 107 also allows you to apply for waivers ahead of time, so you don't have to wait that 30 to 45 minutes. You can apply and wait. I think they're averaging about 90 days right now to getting those waivers done. So I could apply right now to get a waiver in Madison's airspace. They approve it, and I'm able to go in there whenever without any authorization because they already know that I'm going to be there, and the tower has no issues with us there.
What about communication?
Communication, yes.
C airspace or D airspace or this control tower?
So if you go under a COA, you don't have to have a radio. And most of the time when you apply for a COA, you don't have to do anything but file a NOTA, which is called a notice to airmen. So it's just a published report stating what your operations are so people know what you're doing. That's only if they decide to look at it. So it's not a thing that everyone sees. It's if they look it up, they see that you're operating in the vicinity of your operations by chance. However, when you apply for emergency COA, they do say whether or not you need to contact them via cell phone or radio. And that is up to the FAA. And we've never have been told that it needs to be by a two-way radio. We've always been told to call and say that we're doing operations and then call when we're done. That way they have their cell phone number. If anything comes up, they just give us a call. But for the most part, we don't have radios. We are looking at getting radios. Just so it's a little bit easier for us to operate. But again, that just goes down the road of what you want your program to go to and how much you're able to spend. Those radios can get pretty pricey unless you can somehow repurpose your older radios. Some are able to because the frequencies are relatively the same for the radio spectrum that our radios operate off of. So we're in the process of doing that right now, is getting our old radios up and going for what's called a CTAP, Common Traffic Environment Frequency Radios, and that's allows us to talk to towers and other aircraft around us. So not required right now. Don't know if it will be, and it really is situational. So, but really, it really has come down to regulations, which makes it a lot easier for us to operate. So either way, COA or Part 7, it gives you the same amount of freedom pretty much. It just depends on your budget and how much time you put into it. I'm not too familiar with the area around here. Is there a lot of airports? I don't know, it's Janesville, Illinois.
One lot of airports outside of
Okay. So it just depends on how big of an area you are going to be operating. Like Middleton, we're pretty much county-wide. So we needed to get a code, we needed to get a Part 107 to ensure we can get to all those spots. But if you're just operating within your jurisdiction, and your jurisdiction isn't near an airport, I wouldn't even bother to get a Part 107 just because of the price and the required ground school that you need to take. So that's another thing. There's a lot of knowledge that you need there for Part 107. I'll get into that a little bit later on in the presentation, but essentially for Part 107, there's a curriculum to follow to be able to operate like that. With the COA, the FAA gives us the go-ahead to self-certify and train our operators. So again, a little bit more freedom there, but still have the monthly reporting and other things that we need to do. So those are the two options that you need to battle out before we start. And I'll leave my cards here too, so you guys can contact me if you have any questions regarding which process makes more sense for your operations, because it really is tailored to the department and tailored to the operations you plan on doing. It's hard for you to go and say you need to do this, this, and this without you knowing exactly what your plans are. So, again, I can assist you further with that if need be later on. And I'll have an email here so you guys have that as well. But once you figure that out, the next step is applying for those applications and then starting to work in your standard operating procedures. That's one thing that is very important, is that you have a standard operating procedure. One, because if you get into any sort of trouble with flying, and the FAA comes in-house and does a review of your program, and you're able to provide what you do operationally, it helps with the investigation. It helps move it along and favors you more than some reckless potential hobbyists. They are very against what hobbyists are doing, unfortunately. They've had some issues with them in different areas, more so in Madison with following MedFlight and all that stuff. So it's very strict in Dane County when it comes to hobbyists and commercial operations. So it's harder for us right now to fly there. But having those procedures in place just shows that you're ready to go. It brings that professionalism along with the program. And it also, which is very important, is to a lower insurance rate. For some reason, the insurance companies want to see those operational procedures. And it does drop your rate significantly. And there are a bunch of insurance companies right now that are covering. And I would check with your department's insurance because But I do recommend that because it covers personal liability and property damage, which we've actually unfortunately deal with. So definitely would recommend that. And then some of the manufacturers have warranties that you can extend for, I think, 5 years. I would also recommend that because this is actually our only operational one right now. The other two are done. They're going to be sent in here pretty soon, but it happens. And that's just something that you have to adapt with as you go because new operators don't necessarily know exactly how to operate, and it's hard to teach. Because some of them are different. People, when you start it up, you push the controller together, and you shut it down, you pull it straight down. Some people think it's the same thing, both ways. I can see it unwrap pretty quick. If you get that thing in the ground doing the 360, and you tear the motor pretty quick. So we've gone through 2 of those because of that reason. They do sell prop guards, but they get in the way of a lot of things. So we've gone away with those. But yeah, insurance definitely, especially when you're operating near buildings or large electrical hazards, because they tend to lose GPS and go haywire. So we've lost one that way, just flew away from us. So that does happen. A lot of them have been fixed, and that's a lot of the reason why the regulations are the way they are, is because of the fear of those just flying away. So, but just be aware it happens, and nothing you can do about it. It's their new technology is changing pretty much daily, so it's getting better, but not much we can do right now. So once you get those operating procedures done and insurance is in place, then we can start talking about really implementing this program and getting people on board with training personnel, getting their flights logged, and planning flights. So that's one of the things that I do as the program coordinator is I look at different potential hazard areas within our district, and I use an app. You can use the DJI app. It really depends on what kind of drone you have and what platforms allow you to operate on. But I plan out, so we have a conservancy that's over 300 acres, and I'll plan out different coordinate patterns that if we get called out, we can put the thing in the air and fly itself, and all we have to worry about is monitoring what it's looking at and go from there. So that's a big part of starting the program is really figuring out where your hazard areas are and planning for that, and then at the same time training personnel. So I just got done doing that, and that was I believe it was 36 hours total, and the reason it was that long is because I trained them to the Part 107 standard, which doesn't have to happen for the departments here. We did it for again so we could operate on Part 107, and not just the COA. If you decide to go off the COA, then it's really up to you how you want to train, but there are certain regulations that your operator do need to know, just like basic weather minimums that you know right away, so you know how to maneuver if there's an aircraft moving towards you, and then just airspace classification. Well, that's a big one, knowing where you are, what kind of airspace you're operating in, and if you can and can not operate there. So that's a COA. Part 107, a hell of a lot more. So it's pretty much taking people that have no idea what aviation is, getting them to pretty much where I was as a private pilot after ground school. So you're going after the Part 107 regulations itself, airspace classification, airport operations, aviation weather. Let me tell you that is not a fun one to teach, and it's not fun to learn because you're decoding text that is it's shorthand text, so it's really hard to read. Most of it makes absolutely no sense, and teaching people that is really hard. So we stray away from that because technology is on our side. There's a lot of apps out there that decode weather for us. So that's one thing that we kind of transgress from because of what we have to our advantage. After that, we have to talk about loading and performance. So, especially with the Inspire, I don't know if maybe yours can do a payload, I'm not too sure. But it does change the performance of the aircraft when that happens. We are using these for water rescues, so they go out and we are able to drop life vests to people in the water. So we're training on that in summer. So that's going to be something that hopefully we can use Station 3 for. It's about 2 blocks off the lake, and we can just fly it out and go. So the risk for that patient is mitigated before we even get on the scene. After loading performance is, I'm trying to think here, just operational procedures. So emergency procedures, radio communications, aeronautical decision making, and crew resource management. So that is quite a load. We did it in 36 weeks, 36 hours, excuse me. I think that was pretty tight. It was 6 weeks. It was mostly online and in class. We did hands-on stuff, but it was a lot of work for the people involved in my class. However, it was a learning experience for all of us. And if you do go down that path, I would recommend setting aside 5 people to do it. And they would be what's called your pilot in command. And then train those other individuals that are interested in the program under what's called an operator. And they can operate the drone under the direct supervision of that pilot in command. So you don't have to take 30 people like I did and train them to the same proficiency as a private pilot. You can have 5 and then train 15 more to just operate the drone. So makes it a lot easier that way. So once you have that done, then we start talking about contact, potentially other people. I know going around, I'm sure some of you have the same questions. How do we implement this without pulling men from the front lines? We need our guys that are fighting fire. We can't pull them off to go fly a drone. So let's go. One time on there with contracting. In Dane County and in Middleton, we rely on, well, at least in Middleton, we rely on our cops. So if our cops want us to do something for law enforcement, we fly for them while they're doing their thing, and vice versa. We're fighting a fire, they're flying for us. It just allows us to do our job and have that benefit of the aircraft in the air help pulling people from their job. But we also have a Dane County initiative, so if we need mutual aid will call for it, people can fly for us as well. That's in the works right now, but I hope to get that statewide pretty soon. It's an individual, Capital State Police is working on that. So that should be coming soon. Otherwise, we toyed with the idea of contracting civilians to do it. The liability of that is pretty high, so we're straying away from that. But essentially, I mean, it's no different than bringing on a specialty team. So I talked to Madison about this many times, and they're up in the air about doing this because they don't think they can pull people from their crews to fulfill a potential response. But in essence, it's no different than a hazardous instance response that they have, or a urban rescue. They still pull those guys from their stations and use them for the response. They can do the exact same thing for their own response. It's no different. So that's what I do. When I talk about with larger agencies, more full-time, it's no different. And same with volunteers, no different than adding a different job to what we do. I know there's been a lot of talk at our department about, well, I don't want to call it and do this at a fire. It's the same thing with if you've been assigned to drive an apparatus, that is your job. And it's the same thing with flying. If you get assigned to fly, you're flying. And really, it's just so beneficial. I would love to go out and fly a fire right now with you guys and show you, as an IC, as a safety officer, what knowledge you gain from it. Our saying at Middleton is 10 minutes under, 10 minutes off. So if fire is under the roof for 10 minutes or more, we're off the roof. And I have a picture on the slide, I'll send it to you, but you can see at a house where we had a vantage point right above where the roof was completely gone. And same fire, we were trying to hit it from the outside by throwing water up and above. So with using the drone, we noticed that we weren't even hitting the fire. We were crossing over the house and hitting the backyard. So it just increases the efficiency of the operations. And we were able to actually mitigate that pretty quickly. We thought that was gone, but we were able to actually bring it back and get under control and move on to the next burn. We stayed away from obviously the collapsing one, but we did have half the house that was still viable. So again, the technology is unbelievable when it comes to stuff like that. And then search and rescue. It's just another tool that makes it more efficient. We're able to put it up and scan so much more land than by foot, and it's a faster response than the DNR, putting up a manned aircraft. And you can work in tandem with the DNR or the civilian airport. But we have the low altitude, and they're most likely above 800 feet. So we have it covered like primary and secondary search. It's pretty efficient that way. Our operation for that is we fly grid just like we would on foot. And then if the SD card or the battery is low, we take it out, we take it back to our command post, and we look at the SD card to make sure we didn't miss anything on a big screen. We are looking right now at technology that allows us to just live stream into a TV. That technology is there, but it's quite pricey, ranging from $3 to $10 grand. So a little difficult to persuade some people to get that. But looking at that may be a county-wide thing. So another idea is it's great having different departments here because getting the idea together now of a county-wide initiative, I can tell you could help a lot when it comes to getting this program going for all three of the departments in here. So after you get all that figured out, you get trained, your contractors figured out, you really figure out how it's going to work on the fire line for you with the personnel you have and the potential people you have. Then we need to start talking about maintenance. Just like any other thing, you love the aircraft, take care of it. Most of the scheduled maintenance that the manufacturers give you are trash. I would not go off those. Mainly because you do need to take care of it more than what they tell you to take care of it, especially the batteries. I don't know if they're unique, but these are lithium batteries, so we need to take pretty good care of them. Otherwise, there's potential for battery fires mid-flight and in transportation. So that's a big thing for the program is figuring out, all right, what maintenance needs to be done, when it needs to be done, and starting to get a schedule going. So maintenance includes the aircraft itself, the battery, remote controller, firmware updates, the cameras, just making sure it's fluid and working. Again, because it brings professionalism and validity to your program. And when you say you want to sell this and get a new model, because let's be honest, these things there's new models every week pretty much. You're able to show that you took care of it, you can potentially get a better price for what you're selling it for. So maintenance is just as important as developing the program. It maintains it and it makes sure that your operations are maintainable throughout and that your aircraft ready to go when shit hits the fan. So after that, then the biggest thing is to just look back, evaluate, and make any improvements that you need to the program. Whether that be, hey, the code not working for us, we need to go back and decide and figure out problems that would be more beneficial and more efficient for us. And you need to look over those operational procedures and make sure what you're doing is efficient and cost effective for what you need to do. But then you also need to look at your personnel. Are they keeping up with the training? Did we train them well enough? And is the equipment we still have enough? Is it the equipment that we need? So we started with the Phantom 3 and soon found out that we needed a thermal. So, I mean, that was 3 months in, and we already feel like we need more now. We're already looking at getting more aircraft. There is a, I don't know if you I've seen it, the Mavic it's called, it's a smaller drone. It's called a personalized drone. So a lot of people use it to record themselves snowboarding, yada, yada, yada. We're looking at doing it for active shooter situations. So that can go through a hallway a lot quicker, a lot easier than this camera, or even the Phantom. So again, looking at what you want to use for your operations and expanding off that. But then there's also another one that looks similar to this. It's called the M200. You're able to put two gimbals on it, so two cameras at the same time. So instead of flying two of these drones with a zoom camera and one with a thermal, it's on one drone, which again brings that efficiency up. It's more cost effective that way, and you're not using as much personnel to fly and get that visual perspective. The last thing that I always talk about once your program is established, you're improving it, you're evaluating it, you're making it work for your operations, and really bringing it up to scale is then looking to the future. It's always changing. I just looked at the news today. FDNY was using one for a fighter last night. Looked like it was home grown, like they built their own aircraft. Stuff like that changes constantly, and it gives you ideas of how you can improve your program and all of that. But when I sat back with my chief, I said, look, we're missing a vital component. And that is that we have no spot for this, A, and B, we have no manuals for it. We're literally taking a chip out, looking at it on a computer screen on the front seat of part one. That's not going to be viable for A, a natural disaster, or B, have a huge hazardous response. We need something. So we're looking at getting a trailer outfit, kind of like a command post, that's got 4K monitors in it, mapping, as well as a place for potential family members to come in and help us out with our operations. So that's the gist of the implementation. So I'll go through the 10 steps real quick if you want to take notes on what those steps are. The first one is the concept of operations development. That's the key part that I think makes the program sustainable. 2 is the equipment selection. 3 is regulations and operational requirements. 4 is operating procedures. 5 is looking at insurance and seeing if what you have covers your operations already. 6 is the planning and logging of flights. 7 is your training of personnel and contracting to make it work for your program. 8 is maintenance of the aircraft and equipment. 9 is the program evaluation and improvement. And then the last step is to strategize for the future. So that is, in a nutshell, how to get a program going. Any questions on that? There's plenty. Go ahead.
So, based on your experience when you started the program, what was the cost of the return meeting? How many units did you go through to get people up and running?
So at the beginning, it was myself, chief, and one of our time chiefs. And we only went through one. And the reason being is because my chief is super anal about some things. So that's why I was only people touching the device, because he knew he wouldn't crash it. And the only reason we went through it is because we got stuck in an electrical interference that took it away from us. But the other reason why we lost the other one is because it just flowed away. So we haven't really gone through much at our department. Other departments that we can't say the same. I work with Dayton County Emergency Management, and they've lost 2 just to operator error. So it really depends on the department, how they train, and all that good stuff. But it can be a costly investment.
There was 10 different things you mentioned online or something. I don't know whether to write that back.
I'll send the PowerPoint, so you have access to it. Yep.
Now, another one.
Yeah.
Today is kind of breezy. You ever fly in the wind? How's it work?
I have flown in the wind. This strong, I don't think so. I don't think I've flown this heavy.
You wonder where the limit might be.
I limit myself at about 25 miles an hour. This device, it can travel about 45. So they say it can withstand about 45 mile per hour winds. I haven't tested that. No way I'm going to test that. This device itself is
How much is that?
10 grand, only because of the camera. The camera's 6 grand on it.
I imagine dusty ones will be different than sustained ones.
They are, but what's nice about this device is it's controlled primarily by GPS. So it needs to have, I believe, 8 locked-in satellites for it to fly, and it is able to stay within, I want to say, it's not 700 accuracy, but I want to say maybe an inch accuracy, and it stays within where it's homed in. But when you get into winds like this, then you start battling with battery power, and you lose that quick. So potential 25-minute flight, you go down to 5 minutes. And it cannot be flown in rain, snow, or anything like that, because all of the components are open. So,
The temperature response.
no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, the temperature.
Yeah, so the batteries can't go below, try to convert from Celsius, because it's made in China, so it's all in Celsius. I think can't go below 45 degrees Fahrenheit, but they do have battery homes that come with it, so you can get them warmed up before you fly, and that can't exceed 110 degrees Fahrenheit.
Along those same lines, then, too, what special concerns do you have with flying over fires with thermal energy and everything as well?
Good question. So that gets into quite a bit. So obviously there is structural integrity that you have to worry about with the heat, with the thermal turnout from the building. So that's one thing. If you look at our fan company back at the station, you can see it when there's just smoke. It's black. Light when we got it. So that's one thing. It degrades the aircraft. It really brings its life down. So we got to be careful where we're flying it. And with the smoke, and there's thermals that's great. And those thermals, as we found out, do suck in the aircraft. So we almost lost our aircraft to a fire because of the way that air moves. It was we call it stalls. The aircraft stalls, so it loses its lift and it starts to just drop. We were lucky enough to get control of it again and get it out of there, but it does happen, and something to be very careful and cautious of when flying near a fire. When we do it, we set it to about 150 feet horizontally, and then about 200 feet above it. And that allows us to get away from the smoke, but also there's a program that just circles the building and where we see continuity of the thermal. But yeah, definitely something to be careful of. Any other questions?
You mentioned about the posting in the NOTAMs. Is that something that is required if you're even going out for a training application? Is it regulation based off of the application that's being used by the fire and EMS services versus a hobbyist, or what is that NOTAMs? How do you go about that?
Sure. So, the only thing a little iffy right now, they're trying to get worked out because of the issue with a lot of people I work with have no background in aviation, which I don't really blame them. They're going in, they want to use a tool and they think it'll work. They didn't know. My goodness, there's a lot involved with this. So that's an issue that they have found. They're trying to work around it. As of right now, with COA, you are required to file every single flight. So if it's not an emergency, you got to file it within 72 hours of your flight. So if you're doing training, you need to file it. And then if it's an emergency, it can be filed within 30 minutes of it. However, with Part 107, it's not required.
What was that report?
NOTA, N-O-T-A. It's short for notice to airmen. questions regarding the implementation. Otherwise, I can go through what a call looks like and all that kind of stuff.
Got all the acronyms on the.
I do not have the order on the PowerPoint now. Noted?
Yeah, acronyms, whatever they are.
That's the only one I believe that I've used, I think. Yeah, so so a call out, and that varies county to county from what I've seen, depending on how they have things set up. So right now, as it stands in Dane County, specifically in Middleton, if someone requests a drone, our chief gets a call, and then he sends out a cage. It may be different where you guys get paid out and come to the station and figure things out, but right now we are called the chief, and the chief has to just call back and say it's not okay. So we kind of have backwards, but that's how it's working for us. Once we do get that call, we come together, figure out who we have, who's going to be what role. So the roles that we assign are the pilot in command, the operator, if it's different than the PIC, and that's the pilot in command. You do need visual observers if you're operating the call. If you're not operating the calls of Department 7, there's no observer required. However, you may need an observer to get your waivers. That gets into more of the legality of stuff. But I always say when you have personnel use them as observers, just again, brings that safety factor into your operations. Once you have those roles set, then you figure out who your crew members are going to be. You must have crew members, I mean, the people on the ground that are doing the potential search, or if you're flying for a structured fire, it could be the safety commander would be your crew member. So they're monitoring what's going on with the flight. So once those are figured out, you then go ahead and brief on what's going to happen, what the procedures are. So the PIC, the pilot command, his role or her role is to ensure that everyone knows the role and knows emergency procedures in case something happens. Because the pilot command is responsible and has the final authority for the entire flight. And then once those are figured out, you get on scene. It is a different agency. I don't know if you guys are dependent on doing mutual aid with different departments or different law enforcement agencies. Most of the time, most of our operations have been outside of Middleton. So when we get on scene, we're catching up with this commander and figuring out what they want us to do. Go in and do our role. If it's our scene, then obviously, once you get on scene, figure out what to be done and go from there. Just know that I think being able to get these calls outside of your jurisdiction is wonderful. We've just the camaraderie with different agencies is phenomenal. At my class that I got done teaching 3 weeks ago, we had people from Madison Police, Dane County Sheriff, Dane County Emergency Management, the ATF, and the Department of Criminal Investigation. So this technology is not only it brings people to you for your department, but does that interagency camaraderie that is just phenomenal. That's really what a call out looks like. Really not any different than a call. Just requires a little more planning before you go out and go through the mission. Any questions on that? Go ahead.
How ready can you file that emergency plan with
You can file the emergency call out with a so note you can, if it's just training, no emergency at all, 72 hours they ask you to file it. If it's an emergency, they would like it within 30 minutes of your flight.
prior to?
Right.
So my question then is, who, say if I do this right now, I need to file it, where am I sending it to, or how do I look at it?
That's online. Yeah, it's all online.
So obviously this would be part of the training, but
Correct. So I can give you the website if you'd like. I can write that on the board. Well, you can do it, you can call into it if you want. I don't know the number offhand. It may just be the same exact thing as the website because the website's name is wayne.wxbrief.com. So it may be just that. Maybe, and that will be in the PowerPoint as well. So. Any other questions? Alright, otherwise you can all feel free to come look at the aircraft I have here. I'll turn on and you guys can see the thermals and stuff if you want. Otherwise, you can feel free to ask me questions. I'll be staying around for some time. So, go ahead.
You're saying something about electricals, interruptions. What are you talking about? The old power lines?
Yeah.
Sending out something or other?
Yep. And the device will tell you if it's getting too much interference before you take off, which is nice. So you know, or should know ahead of time that there may be potential issues with stuff like that. But yeah, usually
Because of frequencies of operation.
correct. Yep. Yep. Yeah. So these operate off of I can't remember what the FCC calls them, but they're pretty much open frequencies, so you don't have to apply for permits and stuff. So that's why there's issues because they operate off of, yeah, I think it's 2.4 gigahertz or 5 that they operate off of. So there's definitely issues with power lines and stuff like that.
So you mentioned the cost of getting up and running the equipment. As far as training to get people where you could be up and running and responding as a department, I mean, what do you see as like the entry point to that cost?
So getting equipment, as you stated, I mean, if you wanted to go and just get a Phantom, that's $1,200 with an iPad. So pretty reasonable price, and they're dropping pretty quick. So equipment-wise, that's the easy part. Training, it depends on a few things. So which way you want to go, a COA or a program 7, and then who you go with. So the people that do it are, they have different prices. Since I'm from the public safety industry, I know how the budgets are tight, so I keep it pretty, the price is pretty low. But I've seen for a class of 10 people, upwards of $5,000 just for the 10 people. And then on top of that, the price for the certification. So it can get pretty pricey when you talk about training, especially if you outsource it or do stuff that's online. So, but it varies. It varies with the vendor and all that. That's all I've got. So feel free to come up and take a look at what we got and be more than happy to run.